The ongoing battle to acquire Warner Brothers continues to make headlines, focusing on whether Netflix or Paramount will end up with the deal. But what do these blockbuster deals mean for Canada's film and television industry? For more on this, we turn to Douglas Barrett, adjunct professor of arts, media, and entertainment at the Schulich School of Business. And Professor, thanks very much for joining us today. I just want to get your initial thoughts. Earnings came out today. Paramount topping out looks, Warner not so much. Does this give Paramount an edge at all, seeing those numbers today, or is it still a toss-up?
I think it's a toss-up. There are more plot lines in this story than in a, mid-afternoon soap opera. I don't think the earnings today have much impact on where it'll go. Ted Sarandos of Netflix is apparently at the White House all day for meetings, and the Ellison CEO of Skydance Paramount was at the State of the Union address, and Trump has said he wants to have Susan Rice, the former ambassador to the UN, fired from the Netflix board. So it's all kind of a usual Washington porridge, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, in the end, the shareholders will make up their minds, but Warner Brothers itself remains committed to the Netflix deal. That they've got a signed agreement with Netflix, so Paramount here is the interloper, and it keeps edging up its offer.
Professor Barrett, the question I come at this from is as a sort of casual observer, but definitely a non-media expert, is can you maybe parse apart why Warner Brothers is such a desirable asset? And obviously there's benefits for Paramount and there's benefits for Netflix. Can you highlight why I think either the IP is so valuable or just sort of the financial transaction just seems to be something that these two companies, Netflix and Paramount, can't do without?
Well, first of all, Hollywood has always run on the basis of these storied giant studios. And obviously the studios at the front end are making new programming, but what they're sitting on is a pile of rights. So Warner Brothers might be either the largest rights holder in the world or close to it, and it owns franchises like Harry Potter and Game of Thrones. And Paramount, for its part, also a storied Hollywood studio, sitting on a pile of rights. It owns, Star Trek and so on and so on and so on. And because of now a decade or so of original programming from Netflix, it's sitting on a pile of rights. And so what we're really looking at is a fork in the road where these two of the three giant piles of rights will aggregate and be pretty dominant by a significant margin.
Let's take a look from the Canadian perspective. Vancouver, Toronto, Hollywood, they argue over who's Hollywood North. What kind of an impact would any of these mergers have, whichever way it goes, have on production up here and content up here?
Well, it's hard to say, and there's some other things in the mix. Remember, I said at the beginning that there's more plot lines than you can shake a stick at. But the first, I think, major issue for Canada will have to do with HBO and HBO Max, which is part of the Bell Media Crave service.
Our parent company.
Sorry?
Our parent company. I just want to get that in there.
That's right, your parent company. Crave has done very well recently. It's added a lot of subscribers. HBO is a very important part of its offering, highly promoted and so on. Bell Media has a long-term relationship with HBO. There's no immediate issue, but the question will be if Netflix gets the prize, will it fold HBO into the Netflix offering? And will therefore Crave and Bell Media, by extension, have a challenge when its agreement it comes up for renewal? Now, David Zaslav, who is the president of Warner Brothers, says that the plan is to keep HBO independent, and therefore still could carry on with an ongoing relationship with Bell Media. But I think that's the single most immediate threat. Second threat is that Netflix has not played nice in the sandbox with the theatrical release of a lot of the programs that it invests in. So the theatrical distribution industry in the United States is struggling. And if that practice continues, it would also impact on the theatrical distribution business in Canada. As to Canadian programs, that's kind of in the arena of the CRTC now and the Federal Court of Appeal and what's going on with the Online Streaming Act, because that act was an attempt to get the foreign streamers, principally Netflix, but a bunch of others as well, to make a contribution to Canadian programming in the Canadian system. It's unclear to me whether this deal, either way it goes, will act on the output of that question. If Canada is successful in maintaining its policy plans, then Netflix, in whatever form that it's in, and or the studios,
Okay.
and the Paramount Plus offering of the Paramount Skydance folks will have to play along. But looming on the horizon is obviously the Canada-US free trade agreement discussions, which are supposed to start up this summer, and the threats from the president about cultural protection issues. So Canada's cultural sovereignty is definitely on the line with those discussions. Whether this transaction would have a thumbs up or thumbs down impact, but obviously the Netflix folks and the Paramount Skydance folks have the president's ear and are working their way to make sure that foreign countries either are prevented from or don't set up any cultural protection strategies.
All right, we have to wrap it up there, Professor, but thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, and thank you for letting me speak this morning.
Douglas Barrett is Adjunct Professor of Arts, Media, and Entertainment, the MBA program at the Schulich School of Business.